Again to another Peaceful Solution Character Education Program certification class. You can all be seated, those of you that are standing and those that have been making their way in from this wonderful West Texas day. Plenty of heat, which is better than the cold to me. So, you know, everyone has their own weather temperature they like, and we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight also, on how some things are just beyond our control. If you could be turning over in your acceptance units, David covered here, if you turn over to LP 1E, we're going to briefly discuss what David covered in going over the tolerance and what it means to be tolerant and exploring the value of individuality. And remember, to have value is to deem something to be important to yourself. And of course, we learned that on the character unit, page 6. And a lot of these things are rehearsing from the character unit that we're building up to, with that foundation that we've built upon and we're going to continue to build upon. But he went through procedure 2, and he explained to the students that in this new unit called acceptance, that they would explore once again the value of individuality, tolerance, and positive interaction. So if you'll turn with me over to page, we're going to turn over to page 2. Page 2, because page 3 goes along with that procedure, and we're going to need to cover page 3 before we continue. He kind of ran out of time and wasn't able to cover that page, but it's part of procedure 2. But we want to talk about this tolerance that he went over and he was explaining to everyone, because tolerance is something that you really don't see in society. We seem to be a society right now that has a lack of tolerance. People becoming angry. It's in the news all the time, every day. Anger at an all-time high. Delivery drivers beating people. And now, of course, I know in the news they showed a delivery driver that kind of lost her temper and kind of beat one of the ladies she was supposed to deliver a package to, but they kind of cut out all the things the lady said to her. Not that that makes it okay to beat someone, but there was a lot of interaction that took place. And then, of course, airlines are at a loss what to do with what people are doing because of the lack of acceptance of rules that are put upon airplanes, or the service right now of flying. But these things are something that we'll find if we can gather this information together and build upon the acceptance of morality. And that's one thing that acceptance really is built upon, as we'll read here really quickly back on page 2. And David covered this, but we're going to just briefly hit it again to build up to what we're going to cover today. And it says, here's something else to consider. Each person is just as important as you are. And that's something we all have to remember. Every life has value. We went over that in the character unit. Now this means that as you learn to accept your life as worthwhile, remember that so are the lives of others. This is called tolerance, and it is an important part of acceptance. And I want to show you here from the Merriam-Webster's the definition of what we have here is tolerance. Of course, the Peaceful Solution gave the definition there, but we want to show you exactly, if we can get that up on the camera. It says, the ability or willingness to tolerate something, in particular, the existence of opinions or behavior that one does not necessarily agree with. Now, not necessarily agree with. We want to think about, there's things in life that we might not necessarily agree with. You know, I can tell you sometimes I like it when it rains, and sometimes I don't like it when it rains. And when it rains, sometimes when I have something to do outside that's really important, I don't really agree with it raining. But I have to accept the fact that it's raining. Whenever it got really cold here in Texas back in February, I didn't like it. I don't like cold and I don't like snow. That's not me. My children do like it. No matter how much I didn't like it, I had to accept it and I had to tolerate it. And a lot of the tolerance that we learned was, I didn't like that my water froze and it didn't come out of my faucet for 3 or 4 days. I didn't like it at all, but I had to accept the fact that's what comes with cold weather. That, in my opinion, shouldn't be in West Texas, but it was anyway. There's things that we can go through every day that we might not agree with, but we just have to accept. Now, when I say that and the tolerance of the importance of it, we're talking about things based on morality. In other words, things that are based according to the rules. And this is very important because there's a fine line, if you remember, on page 8 of the character unit between what is morally correct and what is immoral. Now, when we say that acceptance and the tolerance of acceptance is an important part of character, we're going to discuss tonight on how accepting things that don't break the rules are what we're speaking about. There's never a time to accept something where rules are being broken and someone can be hurt, where harm is brought to someone, the environment, yourself, someone else, or the environment. If any of those things are being hurt or damaged, we're not saying that we should just accept that. We're talking about acceptance based on morality. Everybody has a choice. And there's some things in life that we just can't control that we need to accept. That it's okay. It's not hurting anyone, and it's not going against the very basic fundamentals of morality. Those are things that we're going to build upon going through this. And the reason I go into detail, because society has, I would say in the last 20 years, broadened the idea of what acceptance is. Acceptance today has become, you just have to accept me for whatever I want to do. Well, as long as you're not bringing harm to yourself, somebody else, or the environment, that's okay. But if you're making a decision that would bring harm to yourself, your health, your mental stability, your well-being, if it would bring harm to me, that's bad to me. Or if it brings harm to the environment, and don't always lock your mind down on the environment being the water, the air, the trees, also society. Remember, we discussed in the character unit on how society is governed by a common body of rules. And those rules are meant to keep us safe. And there's never a time in society to where we can be accepting or show acceptance of something that can hurt someone in society. Because that if you want to become a person that, no, we just need to be accepting of some things that breaks the rules. Well, does your mind change when that acceptance takes the life of your child, or takes the life of one of your parents, or takes the life of your wife or your husband, or takes the life of someone that you knew that you were close to? Does that then change the idea of what we should accept and should not accept? Well, the peaceful solution has already proven that anytime we break the rules, consequences come. And that's just a sad fact of life. But that's part of life, and it is a fact. Well, looking over to page 3, this goes along with what David was covering. And there at the very top in the thought bubble here, it says, to reduce intolerance, regard others with the same care and compassion that you regard yourself. And of course, having that care and compassion, when we add consideration to that, we're going to be building upon, that's respect. And that's what we're talking about when we say having care and compassion and we throw in consideration. We're talking about having respect. And we're going to, as we go through with acceptance, you're going to notice the word communication. And David covered that last week, and you're going to see that word on page 2. We're not going to recover that part, but remember, communication, positive communication, is the foundation for respect. And that's one thing that we're going to need to have in our minds as we move forward, because that's one of the units that we're going to get to that it will mean a lot more if we apply it while reading this. So chapter 1, accepting me, accepting you. Now, this is on page 3. And it says, acceptance, as presented in this unit of the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program, means to willingly acknowledge the positive characteristics about yourself and others. So if you do something that's positive, or you got something you're doing that's right, we're not talking about, put on a shirt and say you're Superman and go around telling everybody, I'm the best. Did you know that? I'm the best at, and we're not talking about that. But if you can do something well, there's nothing wrong with acknowledging it. If you do something that you have a talent, nothing wrong at all. And of course, if you're going to acknowledge it in yourself, acknowledge it with others. Acceptance means understanding that there are aspects of your life that you can and cannot change. We went over some of those things, and they're called fixed character traits. If you want to cross-reference your book, that's on page 4 of the character unit, and it'll also briefly talk about it here. But you'll see as we go through, with the briefness that is used to cover it, you'll be thankful you read about it in the character unit, because it's just going to briefly hit it, where the character unit on page 4 covered it in detail. So notice here it says, in other words, some of the things you have control over and some of the things you don't. For example, we are all predisposed genetically towards certain physical characteristics. Our skin and hair color are all predetermined by our family ancestry. Other things we have no control over are where we were born, who our parents are, and even when we were born. In other words, we have to accept whatever age we are. And that's something, no matter how much you disagree with getting old, your goal is to get older. And that's kind of an oxymoron, to where you don't like the fact you're getting older, but you want to keep living. Well, that comes with living, is getting older. And that's something we have to accept. Now, as some people have told me that are in their 80s, just because I'm old doesn't mean I have to slow down. And I've seen that age can be really interpreted by someone's mind. Someone who's 80 and 90 is still going strong. To them, they're not old. Hey, life's just begun. I'm just wiser now. I know what to do and what not to do. And that's part of it. You can see, when I see that in people, I think, man, they've accepted it. Because some people could think, my days are numbered. Every day I get closer to the end. But you see people that, no, they every day they got more to do. And that's very encouraging, because they accept the fact that no matter how much time they have left, they're going to use every second to the utmost importance that they can help not only themselves but others. Continuing on here, it says, accepting yourself means realizing that you are a unique human being. And that's one thing. Remember our personality, we talked about, that helps make us unique. Once again, remember morals and acceptance. We're talking about keeping the rules. We're never, throughout the teaching of the peaceful solution, are we going to speak of accepting breaking the rules. That will never take place. That's not something that is conducive to a peaceful solution. So continuing, it says, your ability to make a difference in your life and the lives of others depends only on the amount of time and effort, notice, you put forth into your studies. You put forth into your studies. Now, you can go ahead and underline that. And let me check before I tell you. Yeah. You can go ahead and cross-reference to page 11. We're not going to turn to page 11 tonight, because we're not going to get that far. But your effort you put forth into your studies, and you can write, knowledge is power. Because having the knowledge to make the right choice gives you the power to be able to do powerful things that benefit society. You want to talk about a superpower? A superpower is something where you can benefit everyone. That's a superpower when you can learn to practice positive character and morality throughout each and every life, your life and others. You can bring it into the lives of others, into the lives of people you've never met. Meet with countries. In today's society, you can meet with people all around the world. You can engage in a conversation with people in different continents just for your phone these days. And think about how you can help make a difference in societies that, societies are hurting right now due to viruses and economies and wars. People are really depressed. And we're going to talk about some of that depression, how people not accepting themselves and the situations they're in, which are really beyond their control sometimes, can lead to some really bad things. We'll turn over back to the lesson plan here. We're going to turn back over to LP 1F, and we're going to start with our procedure 3 tonight. And I didn't mention it to begin with, but for those of you that are watching online, if you don't have a acceptance unit, you can download it free of charge. It's there on where you see the character unit. If you don't see the acceptance unit, you'll see a drop-down menu that says More. And if you'll click on that More arrow, it'll drop down and you'll be able to download the acceptance unit teacher's manual. and you can put that on your computer and you can go through with it. You can print it out if you want to for your own book. If you're overseas, I know it's hard to get things by mail these days. You can print it out, put notes in it, highlight things, and that way you have them where you can use them, and you can use them as not just teaching yourself, but going in and help teach your societies, your communities, the neighborhoods that you live in. So once again here on LP1F, Procedure 3, and it says, have students turn their handbooks to page 4 and read the section entitled, The Positive Side of Me. So we're going to look at ourselves, and anytime we're looking at ourselves, you're getting ready to evaluate. You're getting ready to evaluate yourself. Peaceful Solution will always have you to evaluate yourself first, and then you can evaluate society, but the Peaceful Solution will never have you to evaluate your mom and dad, your authority, and we'll get into why, but I want you to think about this. The evaluation, you can always evaluate yourself and your actions on society. Sometimes, the reason I say this, sometimes people are very accepting that they have shortcomings and, well, I do it and it's okay. But they can see society do it in an overall aspect and it's not okay. Well, I lay out of work at least once a week, should be okay. But when they go to the grocery store, well, where's all the people supposed to be running these registers? Well, somebody laid out of work today. Well, I shouldn't fire them then. They should be here. It's a job. And that's pretty common in society. I only say that because I heard that recently. It's someone, and I thought, well, that's not being very accepting. It's okay for you to not do it, go to work, or for you to lay out of work, but you didn't like the fact that other people do it. For every action, there's a reaction. So consider, when we evaluate ourselves, we want to make sure that we don't approve of something that we do and then kind of condemn it when society does it. We have to really look at it. Is it breaking a rule? If it's not breaking a rule, then it's okay. But moving forward here, the positive side of me, it says, ask students to share with the class some of their positive traits and abilities. Underline that word, positive traits. Because when you ask students, and I'm sure teachers that have taught class, you'll have to sometimes check to make sure what they say is positive. What's positive in the mind sometimes of a teenager or an adult might not always be positive. So you want to deal with positive traits and abilities. We're not dealing with negative. The reason we're not dealing with negative, because sometimes people can hang their laundry out to dry, so to speak. They can hang it out in front of everyone. And these are things that we want to avoid in a classroom setting. In a counseling situation or one-on-one with your teacher, one-on-one with your counselors, by all means, that's the time to bring out the negative things, but not in a classroom setting. So we're specifically positive traits and abilities. It says, take a few answers, and I can guarantee you these things really engage students. You don't have to pry them or entice them. Whenever you're asking them to tell me something you can do positive, they'll tell you things. You just got to be guard that they're positive, but they'll tell you lots of things. You'll have a lot of interaction with your students. And it says, allow students time to list some of their positive traits and abilities, also some of the things they do well. And you're going to see that when we turn over to page 4. There'll be a section for that. And after we get done with that, we're going to continue reading in the handbook the section, Don't Let It Get You Down. And that's on pages 5 through 8. And complete the chart on page 7. So that goes in with the procedure. Have them list what they do and do not have control over. Allow a few volunteers to share with the class what they wrote. So first we're going to turn over to page 4. And before tonight's over with, we're going to be able to hopefully get to the part that's going to show us acceptance sometimes in the Peaceful Solution. When you go through the books, you have the character unit, and everybody really likes to get into the character unit because it's the foundational part. And then you have this great book that is the third book. It's called Self-Control. And everybody wants to jump straight into that book. But before we're through, we'll get an idea tonight, but before we get through this unit, you'll see where acceptance is really life or death. It's a life or death thing that we have to learn and we have to apply, because many, many people die every year due to not understanding acceptance. And we'll get to some of that tonight. So the positive side of me, here on page 4. Accepting who you are as an individual with moral potential begins with evaluating how you think about yourself and your abilities. And I want to read to you the definition here of what Merriam-Webster labels as potential. And of course, as an adjective, which means a description of something or someone, it says having or showing the capacity to become or develop into something in the future. And we're talking about a positive person, possibly a positive leader. A positive person is always a leader in an aspect. If you're making right choices and doing positive things, you're leading by example. Some people have positions of leadership as teachers. They can own businesses. They can be supervisors. They can just be someone that's been placed over other people as a leader. And that comes from leading by example. And of course, as a noun, it means the qualities or abilities that might be developed and lead to future success or usefulness. So this is something, the potential is something where you can be a benefit. You have the potential to do something. It's within you to be shaped and molded to be a benefit to your fellow peers, to society. It says, once again here, although at your age, you have not reached your full moral potential. Now, I want you to put a note here, because we're talking to, this book is specifically written for 11 to 15-year-olds. But what age do you reach your full moral potential? Not really one, right? As long as you're living, you should be learning. And we are learning. And you can ask anyone that's older in life, and they'll tell you they're learning every day. A lot of things we learn we don't like. Who knew COVID-19 2 years ago? It's not a thing we like. And who knew what the Delta variant was 6 months ago? Society will know in the next year. We're learning as we go. And older people are shaking their heads and thinking, it just wasn't this way 60 years ago. But once again, that's part of acceptance. The society we live in, we have to accept it, and we have to follow the rules that guide it. But once again, your full moral potential. Well, we never reach that. We're always learning. So once again, let me start with that sentence once again so we can continue on here since there's a comma there. It says, although at your age you have not reached your full moral potential, you can accept the type of person you are going into and determine some of the things that are important to you. Developing a positive moral character should definitely be the main priority in your life. So you have goals. And every teacher I know that we went into, they always have a breakdown of goals or hopes or dreams. They label them different ways. Sometimes goals sounds too dull, so they'll call it dreams or they'll call it hopes. The peaceful solution refers to hopes also. But you always have something that's at the top. And then you have your little tree that falls down that are kind of pathways to get you to where you want to go. And of course, everybody wants to be on the top, right? Well, there's tops, and then there's tops, and then there's tops. You don't have to be on the very top, but it's nice just to be on top of something. And it could be just to be on top of your own self and managing yourself. But when you're talking about developing and growing and your priorities in life, 16, I want a driver's license. Well, that's a goal. I'd like to learn how to fly one day. That's a goal. I want to learn how to be an electrician or a plumber or a carpenter. That's a goal too. Want to be an engineer. All of these things are goals. Want to be a parent, have children, have a wife, want a house on the lake. I want a house in the country. I want a house in the city. All of those things are goals, and all those other things they're all okay, these goals. But without positive moral character, families break down, marriages break apart. If you don't adhere to the rules of the road through your moral character, if you're somebody that takes risk, people die. There's a lot of things that when you deal with immorality, or you deal with things that where positive character is not the main focus in a life. And when I say a main focus, it doesn't mean you have this flashing light in front of you all day long. It means every time you make a decision, you consider, will this or will this not cause harm to myself, someone else, or the environment? And it's something that once it becomes a part of you, remember, value, imitate, practice, it becomes a habit. It becomes part of us. It sounds a little different when we're not used to it, but whenever we make it a habit, we always go through this thought process. Will this bring harm to myself, someone else, or the environment? You know, when you think about it as a parent, if you're not a parent, think about something you're responsible for. You know, youth have animals. One thing that I know you can bring up in a school, a teenager and their video game console. You know, would you take it and leave it in the rain? Oh, no, absolutely not. You know, but when you think about something that's has life, that's a little bit more important, like animals. And you want to talk about how keeping them from harm. You know, you don't want your dog to run out in the road. You don't want your dog to get hit by a car. You don't want your cat to get hit by a car. And there's certain things that, with life, once it's gone, it's gone. And you have to accept that. There's nothing you can do once your dog is ran over to get your dog to come back to your yard and run around again. You know, once it's dead, it's dead. So you try to connect with your students through something that's kind of, that has certainty to it. Because when you get into the video games, they'll always say, I'll just go buy another. But they'll guard that more than they will anything else. But try to, when you get into this developing positive character and being the main focus in your life, the reason we're saying this because whenever you're responsible for something that's important to you, you want to guard it and protect it. And that's how you should look at everything. And other people's possessions, not just your dog. Someone else's dog is the same way. If someone's dog ran out in front of you when you're driving down the road, would you try to avoid it or just run it right over? I've seen both in my life, where some people try to avoid them and some people just hit them and keep on going. You know, and I always wonder, how could someone just do that and not care? Well, I don't even know if they see it. But once again, try to connect with them through this developing positive moral character, how it should definitely be the main priority. Try to pull out something where they have to connect with something that's certain, apply certainty to it. You can't go back to the store and get another one. There's no restart button to it. Be mindful when you bring that up. The reason I say pets, be mindful when you bring up things in a classroom setting, when you talk about parents, siblings. Be mindful you could hit some very sore subjects. So try not to bring up family members. I only say that from experience to where we brought up about parents and we encountered someone that got into an argument with their father. Father went to the other room, 30 minutes later shot themselves. Now the student kind of told us about it, but it always stuck in my mind. Be very mindful of what you're using for examples, because there's a lot of bad things people have experienced even at young ages. So try to relate them to more things that are not within the family. Continuing on here, it says, it is ironic, however, that society puts so much emphasis on how we develop physically, but often neglects the importance of moral and ethical development. You know, think of Hollywood. What do they focus on? Plastic surgery, enhancement, hair color, got to do this, you know, have this certain skin tone. Everything is based on presentation of the person. But morality, well, we won't go too deep into that, but morals are not really adhered to too much in role modeling in our times. These stars or role models of society, whether it be sports or so forth. Sometimes athletes spend more on cars than average people spend on houses. You know, it's just something. Now, is that okay? Yeah, it's fine. Don't break any rules. But whenever you're basing your ethics on things, and of course movie stars in general, and I'll use an example to where I seen on the news, it was about a year ago, I seen on the news and they were showing this movie star. And it was showing how they had a child with this other movie star. And I was like, that's odd. I could have swore they were married to someone else. And so I went and looked it up, and they were married to someone else. And then they got divorced and got married and got divorced again, and then they finally married this person they had the child with. And I think, about what does this do to society when we don't keep agreements? And some people are of the mind, well, if you get together and it doesn't work out, it's okay to split up. Well, how does that affect 11 to 15-year-old, right? What in the world could that possibly do to them? When you go into a school, ask them, how many of you have boys and girlfriends? Almost all of their hands go up. And you know something that's really common that they accept in school? I broke up with her last week. I'm dating him now, her now. I'm doing this now. Next year, I broke up with her. I'm dating this girl now. It's this constant of get in a relationship, break up, get in a relationship, break up, get in a relationship, break up. Well, how does that affect the mind of a youth? We'll read about it tonight with acceptance. How does it affect the mind of a youth? Because let's don't be so condescending in thinking that they're just holding hands walking down the hallway. There's no way STDs are alarming rates amongst youth and they're just holding hands walking down the hallway. And it's due to this getting into a relationship, get out, get in, get out, get in, get out, get in, get out. And by the time you leave high school, you've had 15 relationships. It sounds far-fetched, but it's not. Teachers that are teachers in the world, they know it's not. It's a very common thing. Well, where does this come from? Who said it was okay? Well, it's not okay. Well, the Hollywood star didn't get it. Well, if they got it, you wouldn't know. Continuing on here, it says, once again, with so much emphasis placed upon this beauty, clothes, shoes, jewelry, and even what kind of house you live in, it can be easy to overlook the most important thing of all, the kind of moral character you're developing. And that character should be based on rules, and relationships should be based on rules, and the way you attain things should be based on rules, rules of morality. So all of these things that we're talking about, they should be based on rules. And what you allow your children to see, what you accept, what is acceptable to you for your children to see, should be based on rules of morality. If we accept the fact that they can watch things on TV where the rules are broken, then that's what we're going to see in society, and that's what we are seeing. Well, here you'll use the box below to list some of the positive traits and abilities. And of course, the positive character traits you see here, you'll have them list, and of course, they'll be able to pull from memory. If you remember pages 14 and 15 of the character unit, we went over some positive character traits. And of course, here you see for the example is respectful and patient. Just remember in the teacher's unit, you'll have these examples, but in the student's unit, they'll be completely blank. They'll have to fill them in themselves, and they'll have to kind of rely on what they've learned so far. And then, of course, positive personality traits. This is the only time in the peaceful solution where you're going to see personality referred to as positive. There's no other place in here. But remember how we showed before, personality goes right along with character. Remember, behavior, that's character, and attitude, that's personality. And the personality, our attitude, the way we perceive something, our likes and dislikes, you can find those. If you remember on page 23, we had a lot of examples of personality traits. So that's something that you'll be able to gauge your students to see if they can pull back from that information that you gave them. And then continuing on, it says, some of the things that I do well are. Now, once again, you want to focus on the positive. You can even say, what are you doing well that's a benefit to others and that doesn't bring harm to anyone? Sometimes you kind of got to lead it in, and you'll still get some very interesting answers. And I say this from experience of not only teaching, but watching other teachers teach, and the Peaceful Solution going all around the world actually teaching. You get different answers in different environments. And you can be in the same city, be on, when we were in Eagle Pass one time, for example. In one side of the city, we got really decent answers. The other side of the city was a very wild side of the town, I can tell you. The high school itself, it was one side of the school was just a normal school. The other side, since it was right up against the border, we've seen M16s, security guards. When they came out in the hallways, the teachers turned the students over to what looked like a school military. And it was because of cartel. And The answers were different. The way they behaved were different. Everything about the whole atmosphere was extremely different. And the schools were only 5 miles apart, 6 miles apart. But it was very, very different. So keep in mind, you can even be in the same city and get a very different aspect from people. So continuing on here, it says, keep this list of positive character and personality traits and abilities in mind as you learn more about accepting yourself and others. So notice here, we're telling them without telling them. You're going to tell them without telling them. They haven't really accepted themselves yet. This is a process, and I'm 48 years old. I'm still learning to accept myself. All of us should still be learning to accept things about ourselves, because that's part of learning and becoming more positive, getting rid of the negative and accentuating the positive, as we talked about in the character unit, but about accepting ourselves and others. And that's something you never come to a completion on. You're always learning, you're always adding, always developing, and always growing. It says another important aspect of acceptance is learning how to improve yourself without forgetting to value the positive things that make you the unique person you are. And of course, that value is those rules. That morality is what we're talking about. So learning how to improve ourselves without diminishing the value. Like you want to get a position in a company. You don't want to do things that are detrimental to the other people who are also vying for the same position. If you want to be recognized in society in certain ways, you wouldn't want to step on other people to kind of build your own platform. You'd want to work with other people to build a platform, not step on them. Notice here it says the stature gained by achieving positive moral character far exceeds that of feet, inches, glamour, and magnetism. Now, the definition for stature from the Merriam-Webster's dictionary, it says the importance on reputation gained by ability or achievements. So the importance or reputation gained by the ability or achievements. So that stature, you can have a stature of importance, and you can do it in a very honest, positive way. Or you can be a person of stature and do it in a very dishonest way. And talk about acceptance. One thing we've seen this year, and it throws a whole bunch of things into this. For examples, you think about a person of stature, President of the United States. That's known as the leader of the free world. Now, no matter who you voted for, you have to accept who won, right? Well, you still have to accept it. I know a lot of people don't accept it, and I don't have a choice one way or the other. I didn't vote for either one of them, so it didn't really bother me any. But when you think about the acceptance and the stature, think about with the campaign and how, well, they stole it, we really won, this and that. And what is the truth? Well, I don't know. I don't get into politics that much. I don't really care for politics. But when you think about this stature and how they gained it, we're talking about supposed to be the highest position in the free world, and there's no agreement on whether it was attained right, attained wrong, who's the winner, who's not the winner. But it really kind of brings down the legitimacy that you're going to get a fair shake in society. And then you talk about the magnetism. And that's what everybody that's in sales tries to attain, and that's the ability to attract and, as they say, charm people, to get their attention. So what you're telling them, they kind of hang on to your everlasting word. And that's one thing that, you want to do as a teacher. You want to grab the attention of your students, and you want to be kind of a magnet of education, but you wouldn't want to be a magnet of foolishness, where everybody wants to hang around you because you're the fun teacher, because the fun teacher it breaks the rules after 5. No, you want to be someone that you keep the rules and you still attract people because they know you're going to be honest with them. They know that you're going to accept the fact there's things that govern life, and you're going to lead them in a positive way. And there are people that want to, I feel like the vice president with his fly up here, but they want to be led, and they accept the fact that to have success, they have to be led in a positive way. So once again, where they build up here with their positive character traits. They write down some positive personality traits, and those are things that are helping them to move well in life. And I say positive personality traits. Remember, being shy is not a bad thing. That's not a negative personality trait. It would be not beneficial if you're wanting to get into sales. If you're selling things door to door and you're shy, that won't go very well. So you want to make sure to address these things so someone who is shy doesn't walk away thinking, oh, I guess that's negative. No, it's not. Sarcasm, that kind of ties into attitude toward the rules. That can be negative. It can be disrespectful. So this personality and character ties in very close, hand in hand, with the way everything comes together. Now, don't let it get you down. Here on page 5, notice here in the side you see the mirror, and it says, is my hair messed up? Do I look fat? Oh, no, it's a zit. That's the most destructive thing someone in middle school can find. I remember as I was growing up, the infamous commercial, the acne commercial that talked about the North Star, and nobody wanted the pimple right here on their nose, and everybody got one. And it was the most embarrassing thing in the world. You went into the bathroom and seen it, and you didn't want to go back out. And I can still remember those feelings when I was in high school or middle school when I experienced things like that. I can still remember how, you just thought that was it. When you were walking down the hallway, it reached from one side of the hallway to the other, and everybody's seen it. And in reality, you didn't notice everybody else that had acne all over their face. You were too busy worrying about your own, because everybody was pretty much going through it. But there's some things when you're in that 11 to 15 year category that it's kind of defined to that, but it really goes out from there. There's no age restrictions to what we're getting ready to talk about where people kind of worry about things. In life, as well, we'll read and we'll get into it, because in life things change, and they change not just between 11 to 15. They will change as you age. And it says, at times it appears every time you look in the mirror, you see a different person. Your facial features are beginning to change, and they always will, as well as your body, and it always will. Adolescence is a time of rapid physical, mental, and emotional changes. And adolescence is a time to where you get drastic change, and you have puberty where your body is adapting. You start getting muscles, and if I know teachers say they deal with young men, you start getting pains as young men in your upper area whenever you start changing in life. And I know young ladies go through changes in life where they kind of need someone to guide them also in certain aspects. And that's when you need to get with your trusted adult or counselor and talk about these things, because never think you have to go through them by your little lonesome and no one's trained you. Parents, guardians should help talk to their children about these things to prepare them for what's coming, but sometimes people aren't prepared, and things start in life as they get older, and they just don't know what to do. So accepting things, remember the knowledge is power. Education, even to the youngest people, will help accept certain things and learn how to deal with certain things in life. Notice it says here, during adolescence, you might experience many insecurities concerning your physical appearance. There can be many insecurities, and it could be easy to forget the special and unique person you are. Some people have never been told they're special or unique. Some people never heard that. So we're talking from an aspect of someone that knows this. Not everybody knows that. In fact, I would say a lot of people don't know that they're special and they're unique in a way that they're going to benefit society if they push for a positive moral character. But continuing, it says, believe it or not, feeling insecure at times is common and is a normal part of growing up. And it's never going to go away. You can feel insecure when you're 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. That's just part of not knowing what lies ahead. And as you grow older, you realize that you'll worry about a lot of stuff that once you get to the other side of it, you wasted a lot of time worrying. There was really no use to worry to begin with. But we like to worry as a society. But back here to the teens we're talking about, and the teachers trying to guide teens, it says the problem for many teens, however, is that when they become so focused on their outward appearance, they neglect to build their moral character. Many young people between the ages of 11 to 15 suffer from what is commonly called an identity crisis. And an identity crisis can be something that's really severe in the mind and life of an adolescent. Now, an identity crisis is defined as a period of uncertainty and confusion in which a person's sense of identity becomes insecure, typically due to a change in their expected aims or role in a society. Now, when you get into something like this, it can be devastating to a youth. And I want to show you, this was a study that was done. And zoom into it here a little bit. Notice it says lack of acceptance significantly ups teen suicide risk. Now, this was a study that was done, and we'll get to it eventually. For every one suicide that is successful, you'll find there's another 99 attempts. So for every one you see, 99 attempts were tried, but they didn't work out. This study was done with 119 female and male youth that had attempted suicide but did not succeed. And it says a lack of acceptance by family and peers increased suicide risk and other forms of self-harm in teens, new research shows. Now, of course, this is about perception. A lot of this is about perception. Adolescent males hospitalized for high suicide risk who believe they are not accepted by family. Notice they believe they are not accepted by family. It doesn't mean they're not accepted. If they want to do something, the parent says, no, you can't do that. Well, sometimes that just leaves, well, so I can't borrow the car. You don't trust me. Well, now if I was a parent talking to myself at 16, I would have no problem looking at myself and go, no, I don't trust you. But I sure wanted my dad to trust me, but I wouldn't have trusted myself knowing what I know now. But notice they believe. It doesn't mean it's true. They believe this. So they're at higher risk for suicide events even after 6 months following their hospitalization. So even after they went through their hospitalization therapy, they still don't have the tools to overcome it. They're very likely in the next 6 months try it again. Similar hospitalized teens who believe they are not accepted by their peers, once again, they believe. It doesn't necessarily mean it's true, but they've got this in their mind, are significantly increased risk for self-harm, although this effect is more robust in females. So it's talking about self-harm, whether it be drugs, cutting, other things that lead to the damaging of the body. A lot of these things come forth from the belief of lack of acceptance. It doesn't mean they're not being accepted. They themselves feel that way. And sometimes crossing the bridge of getting them to understand, we accept you, it's the immorality that's the problem. That's where we have the problem. But you as a person is fine. We just can't have breaking rules. And of course, that's where it gets into, well, no one cares. No, we do care. And that's what we try to tell the students. We always care, but we can't condone breaking rules. Breaking rules hurts you and it hurts everybody else. And somebody eventually is going to suffer really, really bad because of the breaking of the rules. And some people think, it's just a simple thing, small thing. Look in the news today and look at these very little things where people are getting out of their cars and beating the living daylights out of people. Look at where parents are sitting in drive-thru at McDonald's and their 6-year-old little girl is getting shot because of a drive-by shooting. Society's bad, and you don't always have to be the intended victim. You could just be a bystander. But one thing we know, causing an atmosphere where there's aggression never benefits anyone. And sometimes as youth, I remember in my youth, it was hard to see that I was causing aggression or problems, and I just felt people were against me. But when I can see it now, I realize I was really going in a direction that would have been detrimental to hurting other people. And you do hurt other people. You just don't see it. When you finally see it, that's when you realize that you have to accept the fact you need to change. And part of acceptance, once again, is accepting we have to change. Well, continuing on here with this identity crisis, it says, faced with society's views based on beauty and attractiveness, teens find themselves constantly trying to measure up to what is considered sexy and appealing. And when you look at society and the things that advertisement, it's a very well-known thing, sex sells. That's what they say. You can buy a car, you can buy a soda, you can buy anything, and they'll try to sell it with this, what gets the eye, what gets the attention. They want your attention, then they give you the sales pitch. Well, that's what they use. I tend to wonder, though, if we just use things for what they were, and you take a half-dressed woman or a half-dressed man, and you put them up beside a poster that says, herpes, once you have it, you'll always have it with you. Or gonorrhea never goes away. If you would put that beside factual statements, 20 million STDs every year, you can be the next. If they would put it beside things that this is really what takes place when you go this direction. Because if you didn't have that appealing, you wouldn't get the attention. That's why it's used, to get attention. But the facts that go behind the things that are appealing are always diminished, they're always pushed down low. And of course, it leads to, once again, children doing things they're uneducated concerning. And then they have to accept the fact, once you get herpes, you've always got it. You just have to accept it. There's no way to get rid of it. That's a scientific fact. Young people that are looking, that don't believe it, look it up on the internet. Nothing you can do to get rid of it. So best thing to do is don't get it. Accept the fact that there's rules. Be thankful that we're given this education beforehand. A lot of people don't find this out till afterwards. And we've met people in schools that didn't know this until afterwards. So be thankful if you're educated. If you're a youth, be thankful you're educated on how not to fall into these things and then practice not falling into them. Notice it says society standards are misleading. And that's what we were talking about a little while ago. And they can lead to feelings of self-consciousness and self-criticism. In other words, I'm too fat and too skinny. My hair needs to be a different color. I'm not short enough. And then there are people that do say that. I'm not short enough. And another one, I'm not tall enough. I can't do this. I can't do that. My skin's too dark. My skin's too light. Oh, I'm from this country. I'll never succeed. You have the critical race theory, which I don't even know what that is. And I haven't found anyone that can explain it yet. And I've watched videos on it. And no one really can show what a true definition is. But it doesn't teach acceptance. And one thing the Peaceful Solution has taught, if you want a critical race theory, there's only one race, and that's the human race, and we need to accept that. Color of skin, irrelevant. Country of origin, irrelevant. If we could accept the very basic facts that no matter how rich or how poor, how tall or how short, how fat or how skinny, how dark or how light, everyone has value and everyone has potential, and that's not a theory, that's a fact. If we could put that in the forefront of our minds and in the forefront of our children's minds, we would have a lot less problems in society. But sowing divisions with just theories will never benefit anyone. And challenge yourselves. Look at theories and see if they cause division. Because if they cause division, they cause harm. Continuing on here, it says physical traits such as freckles or a wide mouth on someone who is self-conscious can cause that individual to spend a great deal of time focusing on a perceived physical flaw. Now, notice once again, perceived or something they believe. Not necessarily anything wrong with that person, but they believe that something's wrong with them. One becomes self-critical when he or she begins to dislike their overall appearance because of the one physical trait that is perceived as a problem. Now notice the thought cloud here over to the side. It says, isn't it great that we don't have to wait a single moment to improve ourselves? And I think about that every time I look at my exercise bike that has my clothes on it. I think one of these days I'm going to use that thing. I bought it with great intentions. Not today, though. Yeah. I have to accept the fact I'll probably never use it. And that's okay, too, because I've got other things to do. Here on page 6, notice it says, read the following excerpt from a teen's diary. Now, I want to, and I only do this because this came up in a school one time, so it's okay for me to read my sister's diary? No, it's not. That's called trespassing. That's stealing. You're taking something that belongs to someone else. This was submitted to the Peaceful Solution for us to use. So we were given permission to use this. But no, don't go messing with people's diaries or journals. It's not acceptable. Notice here it says, that's it. I'm not going to smile anymore. I feel like the whole world can notice this gap in my teeth every time I talk, laugh, or smile, especially. It's like everyone is looking at my mouth. They're probably wondering why my parents can't afford to buy me braces. When you read that, I think of people like David Letterman, who is worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Michael Strahan, who this year on April Fool's Day, his April Fool joke was he told everybody that he got the gap in his teeth fixed, and he's someone that's on, I think it's Good Morning America. He was a football player worth hundreds of millions of dollars, but he actually joked that he got his gap fixed because he actually said it made him who he was. So he actually liked it. But there's some people that it would really, really bother to the point of they don't want to be around people. They isolate themselves. And we can think, that's foolish. Well, you're not the person with the gap that thinks it's a bad thing. And it's not a bad thing. And later in life, they would find out it's not a bad thing, but it's hard to see that when you're a youth that's trying to keep up with society and the fictitious world of perfection that's put around people, where perfection is measured with the whiteness and straightness of your teeth, the complexion of your skin, the way your hair is done, not just the shoes you wear, but the price that the shoes cost that you're wearing. All of these things are very fictitious, but it causes children a lot of trouble to try to keep up with society. Notice the following was adapted from an article found on a popular teen site, and it's Teen Health, www.kidshealth.org. And it says, did your nose grow overnight? It's always been a honker, but today it's all over your face. Makeup, you decide, is the solution. You spend another 45 minutes after your shower experimenting with nose slimming techniques and blush. Perhaps there's something you can do with your hair to camouflage your nose. And once again, this sounds funny, but think of the people that spend a lot of money having their nose changed to get the ideal nose. This is a big business. If you've never looked it up, I've always said that if you take an individual, and I'm not trying to speak against people that want to make choices, but if you take people, popular people, that have these facial surgeries and show before and after pictures, they usually look a lot better before they had anything done. They looked a whole lot better. Because once you start grafting and taking bone away, it's hard to change. Then you have to accept the fact you had I don't remember what they call that, but you have a really bad nose job, or it's a really bad experience. They've even got TV shows that talk about these things where people go in for plastic surgery because they wanted it to be better, and it turned out to be really, really bad, and there's nothing they can do with it now. So we're going to stop right there on that point, and we'll let William's going to pick up from this point moving forward, and he'll go back and cover some of these points, because when we move forward here, we're going to get into how the things that we think are comical at first will go back into these teen suicides. It can lead to bullying. It can lead to depression of youth. It can really lead to the loss of life that never had to take place because someone was not able to accept something that was really not important anyway. It was just something that everybody should have accepted, but they feel as though they're condemned for it. So our next class is going to be this Wednesday. It'll be the 23rd, and of course it'll be at 5:30, and we'll pick up on page 6. Thank you once again for coming, and we look forward to seeing you then.